Welcome to Unleash Your Inspired Voice, the podcast that focuses on developing a more conscious-minded, heart-centered approach to life and business. And now here to introduce today's special guest is the host of Unleash Your Inspired Voice, author, content strategist, and Unity Consciousness activist, Peter Clark Nelson.
Hey, what's going on, beautiful souls? My name is Peter Clark Nelson, the host for Unleash Your Inspired Voice. Our guest for today's show is my dear friend, Wanda Vitale. During this eye-opening conversation and galactivating episode, Wanda and I dive deep into what it means to be a quantum entrepreneur and how the Eden Blueprint activation plays a crucial role in opening you up to a life where you no longer are worrying about how things are being accomplished, but instead allowing the who to reveal itself. Now, to be clear, none of this is based on theory. Instead, what Wanda and I speak about in this episode is rooted in real-life experiences. Wanda will share many examples about unity consciousness and what it looks and feels like when you open yourself up to the who, which is when the ideal people, aligned opportunities, and timely resources show up to support you in your sacred mission and movement. So who is Wanda Vitale? Wanda is a multidimensional facilitator, intuitive coach, and the creator behind the Quantum Entrepreneur Program. Working with a multidimensional team of galactics and other beings who accelerate the process of diamond light body activations and the Eden Blueprint activations, Wanda collaborates with a global clientele, assisting them to step out of the limitation of logic and into the beautiful expression of their soul mission as sovereign, multi-dimensional beings. If you have a heart-centered business or a sacred movement that you'd like to gain more clarity on and be able to more effortlessly navigate through life's shifts and changes with ease, this episode is for you, as Wanda will be sharing how she and others anchor in higher vibrational realities well in advance of the masses and how you can do the same. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Peter Clark Nelson, and I want to welcome you to a new episode of the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. This is the show that teaches you how to joyously scale your consciousness while profitably scaling a heart-centered business. And I cannot think of anyone more well-suited to cover these topics than my beautifully and divinely gifted guest today, Wanda Vitale. Wanda, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
Peter, I am so excited to be here and just really excited to see what comes up in our conversation, right? Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm excited too, because I have an idea of some of the subjects we're going to cover. So for those of you who are joining us on this video or listening to the MP3 podcast, let me just say this much. You're about to be galactivated, because there is some incredible subjects that I know Wanda is incredibly well versed in covering, and she works with clients all over the world on. And she and I were recently introduced, and it was as if we've already known one another for multiple lifetimes, which I'm sure we have, in terms of just the way that so many of us nowadays are being connected through serendipity or synchronicity. It's all divinely timed, and we are now living in the age of the divine feminine conscious leaders. We are living in an age where the creatrix and the creator are really coming into their own and creating from a heart space without the emotional baggage of the hero's journey or the patriarchy. And to do that, it requires a balance. And that's one of the things, Wanda, that I really admire about you is the dichotomy of your background and your journey from the corporate world to so much of the sacred work that you're doing now. So share a little bit about that journey so that those who are listening to this podcast really kind of get a sense of how you are doing the work you are now with the Diamond Light Body activations, the Eden template, the Quantum Entrepreneur Program. How did that all get started?
Well, you know, I, like a lot of people that I'm sure you've talked to, I came up in a very traditional corporate world. I mean, really the opposite of the divine feminine. I went into a field where there were very few women. So my background is national account sales and enterprise level software. I sold $20 million consulting engagements, or managed people and teams, who did do this. And all the while being a closet mystic. So I would travel during the week and then come home to a meditation group or sacred geometry or trance channeling or whatever. And eventually it just stopped working, to the point that I was in an accident. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move, so I couldn't work. And I remember, and I was just tired of it. I was just tired of that kind of life. And so at that point, when I couldn't do anything, I remember looking up at my dining room table and saying, "You win. You win. Whatever it is that I came here to do before I took on this body, okay. If it means I'm homeless and penniless, I get it. It's what I'm here to do." And I was that total surrender, when you just have no fight left. And that's really when everything changed. I think within a week, I was introduced to some people, a woman who worked with me and who has incredible gifts, who now is like a sister. I came out of there being fully clairaudient. I've always been clairvoyant, and started to work with people, put a little group together so that I understood really what does happen through me, because none of us really know. We feel it, we see it, but we don't know how we impact other people. And so has turned out to be the group, one of my private groups that supports people. After I work with them, we started doing, I say we because it's me and our, the collective team that works through me, which is really, these are our higher aspects. Then we started to do the diamond, an acceleration of the diamond light body. And, I don't know how much you want to go into that now. The diamond light body really accelerates everything. It's a technology. It accelerates the whole process of moving out of fear, of moving out of all of the old mental overlays, victimization, being at effect rather than being at cause or sovereign. And then last year, so that's how I've been working with people, doing basically whatever needs to happen, whatever my clients are calling forth through a session with me. And then last year, the sessions were different. What I started to do was activating the soul blueprint, or what I call the Eden blueprint. And it's really the blueprint that we each have, that when we've reached a certain resonance in our field, meaning we're sovereign, we know that we're creating our lives, we really don't pay attention to what is out there in the world. We know that we're creating everything. And so when we're pretty much there, this Eden template can be activated. And then what I've experienced is that just sets up this set of cascading events that are what I call our sacred mission, really starts to come into tune. The path shows up. People show up. Really, it just escalates everything. And so this year, or earlier in the year, in January, I started to get the promptings for a group called the Quantum Entrepreneur. Really, it's a group of entrepreneurs taking their heart-based businesses out to the world. They're all sovereign. They know they create everything in their lives, totally responsible. And they also know that we are connected through unity consciousness to everybody else. So it's really fun and exciting. We're seeing how the quantum field works in a group of connected people. Things pop in, timelines collapse. old issues that they have not really been able to pull out of, those just leave. It's really exciting. Opportunities are showing up for everybody. So that's my quantum entrepreneur group, and that's what I'm really, really excited about now.
What a beautiful set of containers that you've said yes to co-creating. And that's one of the things that really just strikes me as you were sharing this story. For those of you who are listening and watching and have been on this path of consciousness for a while and may see yourself as a light worker, a divine feminine, divine masculine, leader, this is really what it means to step into this new field of being a creatrix and a creator of your own life, where you are consciously aware of what it is you're bringing forth into the world because you're tapping into that quantum field through your unified field of energy. It is a series of yeses. And Wanda, first of all, I want to just acknowledge and commend you for saying yes when that experience happened that you were describing, where you were involved in an accident, you were essentially laid up where you could not move. And it was in that moment where it's like, as you said, you win. And I know for myself, I had a very similar experience when I was resisting the calling for a number of years to more fully embrace my path. And my higher self and spirit commingled together to have a mini stroke while I was in the middle of delivering a seminar in downtown Los Angeles, followed a month and a half later by a significant ankle injury playing basketball, which required reconstructive surgery. I literally was laid up for almost 6 months. And so it's an interesting dynamic that what happens when we resist the direction of our soul's calling. So I want to talk a little bit about that diamond light body activation and the way it segues into the Eden template or the Eden blueprint, and how that then opens up the pathway for the quantum entrepreneur. Because the one thing I picked up when you were talking is there is a sequential activation that seems to be happening here, where a lot of the individuals, you and I work with some of the same people, where they're operating at a very high level. They're growing a heart-centered business. They're positively impacting the world, but there's still echoes and residual remnants of past fears and unworthiness. So right. The thing with the diamond light body activation, if you can talk a bit about this, there's some misconceptions I know that are out there in the community. I say the spiritual community because people say, well, I got my diamond light body activated 3-4 years ago, but here they are on the precipice of this new timeline, and there's fears showing up.
Right.
So how is that possible? If somebody's had a diamond light body activation and it probably worked on some level, but here they are in this current timeline, moving into a new timeline, and yet the fears are showing up.
Well, that's exactly what happened when my higher aspects started to work through me. They told me that we were, how did they say it? They told me that we were accelerating a process that would be multi-generational. So I always say, what happens through me is hacks, right? We just do biology hacks that show up in the form of energetic implants or implant removal, but they're just really hacks. So people would say, oh yeah, I had that done, because 3 years ago, or probably longer than that, a lot of people were talking about it. But what it really means, that diamond light body is a technology. It means that there is a cell. I literally see it as this cell or a particle in each cell that gets lit up. And it's this higher level consciousness that gets lit up. And it's a technology, and it accelerates everything. So if and there's different levels of the diamond light body, at least as I see it, as it happens through me. But the initial one, still, when it's fully active, your stuff is in your face. I mean, any victimhood right in front of you. It's just really hard to avoid it. I mean, it's impossible unless you love to suffer. So I work with clients. I always work with clients after we do if the diamond light body activation is what they call to them. I always work with clients on, okay, how do we use it now? So since it accelerates everything, look at, it's just the way creation works. Reality, or what is there to show us what we believe, and to show us and to provide contrast for what we'd love to create, because we're creators. And that's really, you could say that the diamond light body really amps up that our creatorship. So if there's fear, if there's unworthiness, then it will call, and it's basically your soul, will call to you all those experiences so that you can say, yep, here it is again, here's this unworthiness. And then, amplify out, since it's an amplifier, use it to amplify out this feeling of, I like the word holiness. I'm not particularly a religious person, but we are really holy and we're sacred. So it is the exact opposite of unworthiness, if that's the old issue that's coming up. And then the segue into, what's next after the diamond light body. So you deal with your stuff, even remnants may come up, but after when you're aware that it's just energy, old energy in your body, you're not listening to the stories that your mind tells you about the energy, when you're just saying, oh yeah, it's my old friend fear never just doesn't come back. I personally have not felt fear, I want to say, let's see, probably 3 years. I can think of fearful thought, but I don't feel fear organically in my body. Obviously, if a truck were barreling at me, I would feel fear, but that's the purpose that it's intended for, right? It's this physical, shell that we have. So when we know that we're creating everything, when we, sovereignty right now is the big word. Lots of people are talking about sovereignty, and people are just trying to get to the point where they know that they're sovereign, where they understand that they're creating every little comma in their lives. So when you get to that point, then what's next? Then we can really talk about unity consciousness. Because you can't walk into a room full of people who are in varying levels of humanness, right? And all the belief systems that, life is bad, worry, all that stuff. You have to be able to walk in there, and you have to know what your field feels like. Mine is peace, right? So you have to be able to walk into that room and feel the edges of you, and then feel where somebody else starts. And so unity consciousness, you need to be sovereign to move into unity consciousness. It would be like, being upset with your finger. If you have no pain in your body except your fingertip has pain, we have to be able to say, oh, my poor fingertip. Yeah, that's my fingertip. It's not all of me. It's not, we can isolate it. We can say it's my fingertip. And then what do? You care for the fingertip. So I don't know if that makes sense, but really it is this progression. You cannot be in a group of people and be powerful and creative and sovereign until you can deal with your own stuff. Because you're going to we all, as empaths, we're all empathic. Whether we realize it or not, we're all empathic. We all pick up on everybody else's fields. And sometimes their field may be full of worry or unworthiness or concern. So we have to know, again, where we stop and they start. And then what to do with it.
That's beautifully said.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I know everybody that's listening to this and watching this episode, it's going to make sense, because the way that each of us have come into this new timeline together. Yeah, we have our distinct backgrounds. It's sort of like, there's the window dressing on the outside of our life, which might appear to be the same or different, But when we go inside, we're all dealing with many of the same through lines, the same themes. There's unworthiness, there was abandonment, there is fear, there's different levels of guilt and shame. And then there's the sense of joy and love and euphoric energy of just creating from the purity of our heart and soul. And it's just, again, comes back to the polarities or the paradox of being in this human form. We are an infinite energy of infinite creative power existing temporarily in a temporary form that appears to be limited, and yet we are just as unlimited here as we are anywhere, because we are everywhere. Now, that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And some people say, well, I'm just trying to profitably scale my heart-centered business. I read all that stuff. I took all these courses. I get it. I just want to know, how do I build my business? This is where the proverbial rubber meets the road for heart-centered, conscious-minded entrepreneurs, what Wanda is talking about. It's every single timeline that begins to collapse. It is collapsing because a new timeline is opening, a new gateway, a new portal, whatever you want to call it. This is the collision of worlds. Mm-hmm. So this is the Big Bang happening inside you right now. And as we move further into this new golden age, the timelines collapsing, the new ones opening are happening at a rapid succession. So when you harken back, a few years ago, when each of us can take a moment and look back in the rearview mirror of our past and see a little bit of our journey, you'll start to see how far you've come. And you'll realize that when those collisions of the new and the old timelines came together, it's jarring. It's an experience of death. Old ideas, beliefs, ways of viewing yourself, people around you, job opportunities, they all start to dissolve.
And it feels like chaos.
Absolutely, it does.
This is a good place to talk about this. It feels like chaos. I think if there's one thing that I could say that I work, that I try to get people to shift to, is we can either look at our lives, just to ask this one question: how do we look at our lives? Who am I? In my own process, because I love one-liners, because I've got a really active mind that just gets on that train, and half an hour later it would just be in a rabbit hole that I didn't want to be in. So I like one-liners. So I would ask, when something would happen, who am I? Well, we either look at our lives from that perspective of a limited human being at the mercy of some benevolent or not so benevolent universe, right? Or who am I? I am all that is, experiencing everything. So from this chaos, when everything happens, if we could just look at that chaos as, yes, plates coming together. It is, when this chaos that happens is not convenient for the personality. But we're not a personality. We're all that is. In that chaos of jobs disappearing, marriages falling apart, relationships ending, this is the creative juice for the vast creator that we are. When all these timelines collapse, meaning some things just, relationship is over. You cannot stay in the comfort of an uncomfortable relationship. A lot of people do. This is the time really when we can start to envision and feel and amplify out, what do I want? What do I want instead? Right? This is the amazing part of being in this world, and especially now, is when we read the news, there's more and more chaos in the world. So we can either look at it like, oh, this is bad, or we can look at it like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing for what's creative sparks will come out of this. And then to look at it to say, what's my part in this? What is my part in this chaos? What creative stream am I here to create from all this falling apart in the world, right?
That's very well said. And that's just the brings me back to that idea of like the eye and the calm of the storm. And as you were saying a little bit earlier about, and this goes back to the diamond light body activation, it is bringing up whatever remnants, whatever traces or echoes are still floating around. And I say this to everybody who's watching this because we are now in that point where the amount of timelines that are collapsing and opening up are happening in rapid succession. It used to be where we could get like 6 months to a year of a little bit of a reprieve. We could have some fun with the resistance. We cannot resist it any longer. It's like, okay, we got to go. And I would say this to everybody because when those remnants or echoes show up, it isn't that you fell off the wagon. It's the fact that you've been called to step more fully into your divine sovereign self. So as that is occurring, as you are, and when I use the example earlier, like people say, well, I just want to properly scale my business. Well, in order to do that as a heart-centered, conscious-minded entrepreneur, there's some baggage that you need to say goodbye to and say thank you for carrying you to this point, because more than you carrying it to this point, it carried you. And now it's time for it to return to source. And as you were saying, it's the fuel, it's the creative juices that are just churning and getting ready to now propel you. So when people are going from that diamond light body activation, and then there's the Eden blueprint or the Eden template, right? So you've got that. Let's talk a little bit about that and the role that plays in unity consciousness, because that's a big subject you and I are incredibly passionate about. And from your experience, how does the Eden template being activated from the diamond light body activation play a role in somebody's creation and living through unity consciousness?
Well, this is new. There's no books about this. This is so new. You started your beta group for unity consciousness. I started my beta group with a select group of people, with a small group of people, just to be able to articulate what happens, what really does happen. And so I can just tell you what I'm experiencing. The distraction. So this is like my guides show it to me like a Merkaba that we have in us. It's just like a blueprint that becomes active, lit up. Our galactic aspects, it's kind of like a docking station for these higher level aspects for us to come in, and for most of us, we're galactic. I mean, who came to the earth? So we all have galactic aspects, but it's this, think of it like a light grid inside of you. The higher level aspects are able to come in and basically link in with that in terms of frequency. And so what's happening, what I'm seeing with my group is that the distractions from outside saying, oh, I don't know how to do this, I don't think I have time, all the excuses, those distractions just go away. And I would say in my own life too, it's like there's this very powerful hum of power that just is emanating out. This is our focus, and then we have work to do. It's not an egoic thing, but it's a tremendous amount of focused energy that comes out of your field and that you feel. And of course, life is inside out. You know, what we feel inside is reflected out there. And then opportunities start to show up. You know, all business owners, heart-centered ones especially, because most of us have had we're just not all that grounded, right? Because it's just not been our role to be grounded. Some people are really grounded and some people aren't. It's okay. So the how, when you're up there in the clouds, pulling in amazing transmissions and energetics that are transformative, right? That is one kind of energy. The other one is this, okay, but what do I do with it, right? So what I'm seeing then in the group, because there are people in there like that, is that the how starts to show up. And that's what everybody wants to find out. Well, how do I do this? Well, it's not our job. I have always said the how is not our job. When I started to do this a few years ago, my galactic team came in and said they take care of marketing. And for me at the time, I thought, well, that's nice, we'll see. And then things just started to show up, literally. And that's, when we talk about timelines collapsing and timelines, everything already exists in some dimensional timeline. We don't create anything. We just connect with it, with something that's already done. So, that's how the quantum field works. Things just drop in. And when you get a group of people that are connected, like one big, I always see it, I'm seeing it now, like a geodesic dome, like this grid work that looks like a geodesic dome where everybody's holding a point on the grid. Everybody's got a different level of expertise in every area, even the hows, the technical part, different backgrounds, different everything. And the hows just drop in. Some things just drop in, right? Yesterday, one of my friends called me and we were chatting, and she introduced me to a couple of people that are going to be, I think, pretty amazing for my own business. So this is, we don't need to worry about the how. We just need to know that the how is taken care of. We need to feel the completion of it. This is really what I'm seeing in the group. I'm just seeing how I'm seeing that things are dropping in, opportunities, awarenesses that are coming in like downloads. One of the people in my group, I had told me that she didn't really have goals of where she wanted to see her work. She didn't know. And after, I think, our second meeting, it came in like a book with details. So this is how it works. When you know who you are and that you know you're creating and that you give up how it has to come in or what it has to look like and connect with everybody else, the how just lines up. And I think I got a little off tangent, but I'll get back to this gentle buzz, this focus. It's that way in me. I just don't think about a lot of different things now. I would say that my mental, the mental part of me is very focused and very calm. It's like a generator got turned on in me. And other people in the group are saying the same thing. They're calm, they're hyper aware of like going through their lives, saying what fits, what doesn't, yes, yes, no, no, maybe, deal with it later. There's just this great clarity that's showing up for everyone. It feels like I say it feels like, but I know we're on a timeline. Nobody really knows what that is, right? Of the spiral of consciousness. Astrology for me gives me a little bit of a handle on when, but it's time for this. It's time for heart-centered business owners to get out there, even when they don't know what they're doing, and even if they don't know how. It's time. And let that knowing that this is what they're here to do, let that be enough until more comes in. And that's what the Eden template does. It's saying yes. It's this big yes to something that you don't even really know what it is. But you just say yes every day, no matter what. And then when you say yes enough, the path starts to show up. And you don't need to know, because you can feel it, you know it, and then you start to get the feedback from the world. It's time for people to step up. The world needs everybody now. So that's what the Eden template does.
Wow. It's an activation and a template, if you will, to unity consciousness. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said everything you said, because when you said you thought you'd gone off on a tangent, I'm like, no, not at all. In fact, we're just getting started with some of this, because you're right, that the timeline we're in, we may not know all of the details of this timeline, but we have certain terms and phrases that we speak as human beings, unity consciousness being one of them. And I just love the way you talked about the hum, the way that the body temple, just our carbon-based DNA has been activated. It's been harmonized to a higher level, which is what we're here to be. We're not here to be living in that low density vibration for the rest of our lives. We came in to experience it and then to transmute it. And in that transmutation of it, we are now stepping into more of our soul's purpose as human beings, which is why, and you see this because of the Quantum Entrepreneur Group, there are more heart-centered entrepreneurs in this world than there were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and exponentially more than there were a decade ago. And what was described as a heart-centered entrepreneur 3 to 5 years ago has evolved. And I think what I really love about what you were talking about is the dichotomy between the who and the how. And this was a subject, not coincidentally, that came up 2 weeks ago in my group program called The Activation. And it happened to come from the beautifully divinely gifted Marcella McMahon, who introduced you and I.
Yes.
And so Marcella brought up in one of our group sessions the importance of not getting bogged down with how something is going to be scaled. Yeah, be aware of it, to the extent of, okay, look, I realize I've got to do this for my business, or I'm going to go and do that. But rather than focus on the how, which is the patriarchal hero's journey mindset, it's shifting into the who. Who can I bring in? Who am I receiving? Who's going to come in and work with me and collaborate with me? Because the who is unity consciousness, as you beautifully talked about the geodesic dome, and each person with a pulse, their finger on the pulse of the grid. We're all bringing our gifts to the party.
Yeah, and this whole thing with sovereignty has meant that we have to get really comfortable with who we are, with our unique note that we bring, because in unity consciousness, there is no competition. Because really, nobody else does what you do, Peter. Nobody. It may seem similar, but we're energetic beings. We're not human beings. We're energetic beings. We each carry a very specific frequency. And so when we really understand that, we can come together with other people who together we make up a chord instead of a note. And the power, I see the power is of the chord is greater than the note. I look at all relationships now as well as collaborations, but really they're functions. I have a kind of, I've just, since I see everything as energy, I tend to look at things in a more impersonal way, but we really are energetic configurations that my friend, Teresa, and I, who do retreats together, and we do groups, but we do our global retreats. We are very different in the way that we experience energy, just very different. And together, and we each have a different audience, and together we can feel it and others can see it. So together we're a definite configuration, energetic configuration. I would say that about my husband as well. I love him, but together we are an energetic configuration that is somehow, however that works, is able to reach and touch more people in a more expansive way. So when we look at that from a business perspective, really, instead of shying away from doing things with other people, say yes, see who feels right, and then explore that. Because it's so much more powerful and everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Absolutely. And I think I'm so glad you described the relationship with your business partner, with Teresa, and your husband, and how that relates into this new quantum level field that we're now playing in what some people could still call a 3D reality. Well, this beautiful Mother Gaia, this holographic existence that we're having here, there are multiple dimensions, multiple universes all happening simultaneously. And we are now discovering the fact that we can move in and out of these simultaneously. And
Exactly.
so these configurations that, yeah, you want to be surrounding yourself with like-minded, like-soul people. Okay, that makes sense. But part of what's happening now with Unity Consciousness is different people from different parts of the world are showing up in our respective awareness, our field of perception. And what we used to say no to, or at the very least, we would say yes to conceptually, and then all of a sudden our unworthiness and fears would kick in, and we're like, oh, it's got to be perfect, and it's got to look like this, and it's got to look like that. That's saying yes and then saying no. So a lot of what, and I say this to those of you who are listening and watching this, a lot of what Wanda is really talking about here is you're saying yes to the things you've always said yes to, but you're saying yes in the moments where you used to hesitate. You're saying yes in the moments where you used to say no, and you come up with all sorts of grandiose reasons why it's better to just sort of stay where you are.
And let me just say this, because this is so key. Who's saying the yes? So that's really key. When we believe that we are our mind and we're pushing rocks uphill, and I was the queen at that, making things happen, pushing things through. If that's who you believe you are, then that's when we say yes, we feel that deep yes. And then the ego, the mind says, oh, yes, but, right? But when you realize, when I say yes, I already talked about me going through that total surrender. I mean, when all that happened, I had no money, I couldn't walk. Really, death then felt easier, right, than having to deal with what I had to deal with. So when you go through that big surrender, what you really realize is that you don't have to figure any of that out. You just have to feel the yes. And then all these other higher aspects that really is who we're made up of, it's the non-physical parts of ourselves, they do all the orchestrating. Really. So we're, early on, my guides told me, this came out in a session, but they've reiterated it so many times with people that really hear in the body, we are like the tip of the magic wand. Mm-hmm. And that we're the crystalline tip of the magic wand. We look at opportunities, or we look at anything, and we say, so if it's an opportunity to grow your business, we say yes. We point that tip of the magic wand. And as we do that, then the power of all that we are in every other dimensional reality comes through us, gets channeled through us to create whatever we've said yes to. Whether it's yes to an opportunity, or we point that magic wand, that tip of the magic wand, to a situation that we don't like and say, oh, this would be better. Again, we say yes to an improved condition. And then everything that we are moves mountains. So that's when our job really is to be clear on the yeses. And then that's how things just show up. We just keep following the energy, right? So the old way is, oh, I have to do lists, and I have to do whatever, your background is marketing, but all that stuff that I don't want to do. I just don't want to have to do it. However, when I say, in my experience as a business owner, is when I say yes to something and feel the energy of it, then I am happy. That's a different way for me to go in and do these other things that were before I would have resistance to doing, adding names on my email list or, doing this other stuff, because that feels energized to me. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes beautiful sense. I love the way you just described that. Because so much of it is everybody that listens and watches this podcast, the beautiful souls that come through and collaborate with you and I in our respective businesses and our group programs. Without fail, every single one of them, every single one of you who are listening and watching this, you have a deep, unstoppable passion to raise the consciousness of the planet. You have these gifts and these skills and talents that are a beautiful convergence of your galactic infinite self and your human self. And in order for all of this to harmonize, to truly fulfill what your heart is calling you to, you have an inspired message, you have a mission, you have a movement that needs to be seen, heard, and felt. And there's specific details in that from a human component that, to your point that you eloquently were talking about, Wanda, sometimes that it can drain us. And it's just like, oh, I don't want to do that. This is where unity consciousness comes into play. You know what your heart is calling for you to create. But in order for you to create this, space has to be established in order to receive what it is you're giving. So as you give, you receive. And we know that when things arrive in our lives and we want to receive something more and more expansive, what do we have to do? We have to get out of the way. Right. So that is the single most important component of the how. If people are wondering, how do I scale my business? How do I do this? How do I do that? First, be clear on what you're asking for. Trust that you are worthy to receive it. And then surrender, as you were saying, Wanda, surrender the control over the situation and just kind of get out of the way and let it show up. But when you want to get people to work with you and collaborate with you, and you have areas like you were saying, like in marketing, and so there's a recognition, it's important. It's where you create beautiful, high vibrational collaborations with specialists, people who have a specialized skill set, but that are operating at the vibration and frequency that you are. And the days of just trying to do it all ourselves because we're entrepreneurs, and the do-it-yourself mentality is sort of a foregone conclusion as an entrepreneur. It's a double-edged sword. And I love the way you talked about the edge of the magic wand. So as we get ready to wrap things up here, Wanda, I know there's so much you talked about that there's many, many layers, and I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you. I know that you'll be a part of the podcast again, and we're also doing some Facebook Lives together. Yeah. So for people, though, who want to dive deeper, they want to get to know more about the Diamond Light body activation. Maybe this is the first time they've ever heard this term, or the Eden template has really sort of drawn them in. And then, of course, you've got the Quantum Entrepreneur Program that you just launched. I know you're going to be doing more of those. Where can people listening to this podcast and watching this, where can they go to learn more about you and really sort of engage with the sacred work that you're doing?
People can learn more about me on my website, which is Vital Enlightenment. My last name is Vitale, so it just looks like it sounds, www.vitalenlightenment.com. Or you can find me on Facebook under my name, Wanda Vitale, and also Vital Enlightenment. Yeah, there's so much more. Gosh, it's just time for us to give up this whole belief and struggle as a business owner. Decide that we're going to have ease or we're not going to have it at all. So, and then I just wanted to say that it rolls out that way. Right? When we decide that ease is the path, then that is how it shows up. And there's just no overwhelm when we decide, when we're adamant in the state of ease and peace in our lives. So I just also wanted to say that. And thank you so much, Peter. There's just, so much that we could talk about. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're so very welcome, Wanda. It is truly an honor to have you on here and to be connected with you and to see the beautiful and empowering things you're doing for so many people all over the world. This is a beautiful time. We're living in a golden age. We're living literally in the age of unity consciousness. And it's no longer just a theory that we can talk about and say, well, in a better time and a better place, it's going to happen. No, it happens now. And it happens first and foremost within each and every one of us. And then through that activation, we share it and we become the reflection by which we are putting out there. So that's part of that. That's a huge component of just the trust. And I absolutely love what you're doing. The part you were saying about the ease, it's just so funny because recently, a week ago, there was something I was manifesting into my life and it just happened effortlessly. And I caught myself literally saying, well, that was easy peasy. I'm like, I've never said that before. I mean, I've heard the term, but I was like, where did that come from? And I stopped and I just sort of laughed at that. But that is exactly to what you were saying. It's easy. It's effortless. We don't have to struggle anymore. It's no longer part of our journey. And I just want to say thank you to not just being on the podcast, but thank you for saying yes when you had all these reasons to say no to your journey. And you've continued to say yes. And as a result of you saying yes, you're creating these beautiful, activated, safe containers for other souls to come in and to see who they truly are and then to go share their gifts with the world. So thank you for all that you're doing. And for everybody listening to the podcast or watching this video, from my inspired voice and grateful heart to yours, go unleash your inspired voice because the world needs to see, hear, and feel your inspired message now more than ever. Thank you for joining Wanda and I on the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. And I look forward to having you join me on the next episode. Take care and have a creatively abundant day. I want to thank our guest for today, Wanda Vitale, for joining us on the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. As you just heard and experienced during this galactivating interview, Wanda's sacred and highly activating work teaches coaches, mentors, and gifted healers from all over the world how to live a life in the absence of fear, doubt, and patterns of limitation by consciously and joyously working with the quantum field. Wanda is not only a dear friend of mine, but she is someone who has positively impacted my life and my own heart-centered business in a very short period of time in ways that words are just not adequate to fully express. In fact, this interview took place just prior to me not only receiving a one-to-one session with Wanda to activate my Eden Blueprint, but she and I are now working together on a project to produce a book based on her Quantum Entrepreneur Program. So stay tuned for announcements on the book later this year. Along with her private one-to-one clients and group programs, Wanda also co-facilitates sacred journeys and global retreats with her business collaborator and best friend, Teresa Lutenegger. Their latest sacred retreat, called Alive in the Mystery, is taking place September 5th through the 9th in Mount Shasta. For information about the retreat at Mount Shasta, be sure to visit vitaleenlightenment.com/Shasta. And to follow Wanda's insightful and inspiring guidance on social media, be sure to follow her blog at vitaleenlightenment.com and also on Facebook. To get access to bonus material from previous guests and episodes of the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast, as well as being notified of upcoming guests and special events, please be sure to visit unleashyourinspiredvoice.com and sign up today. I also want to give a shout out and offer my eternal gratitude for the divinely gifted team here at the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. Talassa Tam of Talassa Designs, who is the amazingly gifted artist behind the branding of Unleash Your Inspired Voice. To learn more about how she can bring your vision to life through beautiful and heart-centered brand design, please visit talassadesigns.com. And to my dear friend and brilliant podcast producer, Samantha Castro of Castro Creations, thank you for all you do. Without you, the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast would not exist as it does today. If you're seeking high-level editing, mixing, production, and support on your videos or your podcast, please be sure to visit scastrocreations.com. As always, thank you all for joining us on Unleash Your Inspired Voice and for playing an important part in giving birth to unity consciousness in our lifetime.